Man, when you look at what has been happening in Baltimore's trenches, it feels like every snap carries that mix of curiosity and concern that only football can deliver. The tape keeps showing the same story, and it is wild to think that the coaching staff watches those reps every week and still hesitates to shake things up. The interior has been a roller coaster, the edges have been unpredictable, and every single guy up front has taken turns having rough stretches. It is part of the game, sure, but at some point you start wondering when the next move is coming. That is why the possibility of seeing Emory Jones finally getting close to stepping on the field brings a kind of nervous excitement. He is the definition of a mystery piece. You look at him and think, this could either stabilize everything or create even more chaos. But Baltimore is reaching that moment where doing nothing might be the bigger risk. It almost brings back memories of the way Colorado handled their quarterback change during that wild game against Cleveland. Different situation, obviously, but the feeling was the same. It could all swing in either direction. Emory Jones does not feel like that level of coin flip, but he definitely sits in the category of player who could completely shift the rhythm of the offense. And with how inconsistent the blocking has been, trying something new is no longer just an option. It is becoming a necessity. Hearing that he is getting close to being ready to actually play adds another layer of intrigue. Because if he truly reaches that point, then the question becomes whether the team will pull the trigger and throw him into real snaps. Nobody knows, but the vibe around the building feels like change is sitting right there on the table. The thing is, the depth chart right now is telling its own story. You do not want to stick a guy out there unless you trust him, but at the same time, the current setup has not been giving Lamar Jackson the stability he needs every week. The offense deals with pressure leaking in almost instantly, and it starts wearing down the whole rhythm of the game. Some of these issues have been building for weeks, and you see the frustration even in the players who are normally calm. The idea of it cannot get worse has become a running thought among fans, because the struggles are happening so consistently that any shakeup feels worth the gamble. And then comes Tyler Linderbaum stepping up at the podium, owning the group's shortcomings with a level of honesty you just do not hear every day. He talked about the need to run the ball better, and you could tell he meant it. Baltimore's identity has always leaned on that ground game, that confidence of lining up heavy and daring another defense to match the physicality. But this season has flipped that script. Instead of bullying defenses off the ball, they are getting stalled in short yardage downs. Instead of creating lanes for Derrick Henry, they are forcing him to fight for every inch. And when your center is openly saying they are not running the ball effectively, you know there is some real soul-searching happening inside that room. Linderbaum kept it simple. The red zone problems start with the offensive line. If you cannot push bodies back, you cannot punch it in. Baltimore has the talent, but the technical execution, the cohesion, the consistency, that is what has been missing. Hearing him say he would rather see extra points than field goals hit home for a lot of fans, because this offense should be finishing drives, not settling. His accountability had a tone that stood out because the messaging lately has been polite optimism, the type that smooths over the rough parts. But Linderbaum cut straight through that and made it clear that this has to improve now, not later. Meanwhile, the injury situation is doing nobody any favors. Lamar Jackson missing practice again with another lower body issue is one of those things that makes everyone collectively hold their breath. He has been through a hamstring, a knee issue, and now the ankle, all in one season. You can see it in the way he moves, the way he avoids hits, the way he tries to stay upright in the pocket behind an inconsistent front. It is not that he cannot play, it is that he is clearly not moving at full capacity. And with 2 games in for days, the timing could not be worse. And Lamar was not the only one missing. Rashod Bateman sat out. Kyle Hamilton missed practice with 2 different injuries. Isaiah Likely, Keaton Mitchell, Roquan Smith, Ronnie Stanley, the list stacked up quickly. Baltimore did get a bit of a boost seeing Marlon Humphrey moving around in limited fashion, and Justice Hill back in full. But overall it paints the picture of a team trying to get through a physically brutal stretch of the season, with a short turnaround before facing Cincinnati on Thanksgiving night. The team is clearly trying to manage bodies and avoid making anything worse. All of this sets the stage for a matchup against the Jets team that looks different than expected. The big storyline coming out of New York is Tyrod Taylor taking over at quarterback every time these teams meet. It feels like a former Raven ends up behind center for the Jets. But the reasoning behind this move makes sense. Their season has gone sideways. Their young quarterback has struggled, and eventually the coaching staff reached the point where they had to try something else, even if Tyrod does not drastically increase their chances to win. The locker room needed a spark. Now Baltimore has to prepare for a quarterback who is not afraid to push the ball downfield. That is one of the biggest differences between Taylor and the previous starter. Taylor will take deep shots, even if it means risking a turnover. And that changes how Baltimore's secondary has to play. It puts pressure on the corners, forces safeties to stay disciplined, and challenges the coverage shells the Ravens like to sit in, with Garrett Wilson unavailable. The Jets are giving opportunities to younger targets, and even though the names are less intimidating, the willingness to stretch the field creates a different kind of threat the Ravens cannot ignore. Baltimore's defense has turned things around since the bye week, going from one of the league's worst units to a group that suddenly looks fast, aggressive, and confident. The blitz packages have been sharper, the tackling has tightened, the communication has improved, and even without the sack numbers jumping off the page, the pressure has arrived in key moments. The turnaround has been dramatic enough that the defense is now carrying a bigger share of the load, while the offense tries to navigate its inconsistencies. And that brings everything back to the trenches again, because none of the offensive problems disappear unless Lamar gets consistent protection and the run game gets back to being more than occasional flashes. The Jets still have talent up front, even after moving pieces around earlier in the season. Will McDonald has quietly built a strong campaign, and his burst off the edge is something Baltimore absolutely has to prepare for. Every defender on that line is going to test the Ravens' tackles and guards, and the results of those battles are going to determine the rhythm of the entire game. What makes this stretch so fascinating for Baltimore is the contrast between how the defense has surged and how the offense keeps battling through turbulence. Watching this team earlier in the season, nobody would have predicted such a dramatic turnaround on that side of the ball. They were giving up chunk plays, blowing coverages, missing assignments, and struggling to get pressure with just for rushers. But coming out of the bye week, it feels like the entire mentality shifted. Suddenly the secondary is attacking routes instead of reacting late. The linebackers are filling lanes with purpose, and the front is finding ways to collapse pockets even without a dominant individual pass rusher. It is a group that realized it had no choice but to rise, and that urgency has carried them through this 4-game win streak. Still, the question hanging over this matchup is how the defense will respond to a Jets offense that looks structurally different now. Tyrod Taylor brings a completely different rhythm compared to the quarterback New York started most of the year with. He is quicker at making decisions, more comfortable pulling the trigger on tight window throws, and far more willing to test the defense vertically, even when the accuracy is hit or miss. Just the threat of those deep attempts forces a defense to play more honest. Baltimore has to be sharp with their rotations, especially when disguising coverages pre-snap, because Tyrod is a veteran who has seen nearly every look a defense can throw at him. If he gets early confidence, he becomes dangerous, even with a supporting cast full of young and still developing pass catchers, and that is where Baltimore's cornerbacks come into play. Nate Wiggins has been one of the brightest spots on the team, showing both discipline and that rare recovery speed that erases mistakes quickly. Kyle Hamilton has become the chess piece again, lining up at every spot imaginable and turning the blitz into a weapon that offenses constantly have to account for. Brandon Stevens, Rock Ya-Sin, and even Darius Washington have all had moments where they stepped up and filled critical roles. If Marlon Humphrey makes it back in time, the secondary becomes even more flexible. But even without him, the group has shown it can hold its own. The biggest priority will be avoiding miscommunications, because Tyrod thrives when a coverage breaks down and someone slips behind the safety. Meanwhile, the Jets do have a run game that can flash when everything times up correctly. Even with their top offensive weapon unavailable for the time being, they still have backs who hit the hole fast and time their cuts well. Baltimore has to maintain discipline up front. One misrun fit or one over-aggressive angle could turn an average handoff into a chunk play. The Ravens have been far more reliable in that department lately, with Patrick Queen settling in, Roquan Smith diagnosing plays almost instantly, and the interior line holding gaps instead of getting moved off their marks. If that formula holds, they can force the Jets into long downs and make their offense one-dimensional. But as much progress as the defense has made, the reality is that the offense remains at the center of every conversation surrounding the Ravens. When this unit is firing, They can hang with anyone in the league, but inconsistency has been the theme. And the offensive line is the root of it. There are snaps where the line looks composed, coordinated, and strong, and then, almost instantly, there are snaps where pressure comes screaming off both edges or straight through the middle. Lamar Jackson can escape chaos better than most quarterbacks in football, but no one can work under constant disruption. Eventually, it affects decision-making, timing, and play calling. It is why the run game is so important, especially now with Derrick Henry playing such a central role. He is not the type of back who thrives behind disorganized blocking. He needs lanes, momentum, and a chance to get downhill before the defense meets him at the line. When those lanes open, Henry becomes a battering ram who breaks tackles and pulls defenders for extra yards. But when the blocking collapses instantly, even a powerful back like him gets smothered. Baltimore has to reestablish that identity of physicality that used to define them. A good run game not only helps control the tempo, but also keeps the defense honest, slows down pass rushers, and opens play-action shots that Lamar loves to hit. The Jets' defensive front is exactly the type of challenge that exposes weaknesses if the Ravens are not locked in. Will McDonald has been having the kind of breakout that sneaks up on people who are not paying attention. His burst off the line is impressive, and his leverage gives offensive tackles a lot of trouble. Pair that with a mix of interior disruptors and a scheme built around closing pockets quickly, and Baltimore has no room for sloppy technique. They are going to have to play with fundamentals, not just effort, because the Jets' defense is relentless even without the stars they once had. And as the Ravens work through that, Lamar must continue to find ways to keep the offense afloat, even with all the physical limitations he is dealing with. He is still one of the few players who can turn a broken play into something special. His ability to extend plays gives receivers more time to shake free, and his presence alone keeps defenses from selling out against the run. What he needs is some rhythm early, some clean pockets, and a couple of high-percentage throws that get the offense into a flow. Because once Lamar feels that rhythm, even if his mobility is limited, he can orchestrate drives that wear defenses down. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Your support keeps us bringing you the latest news on the Baltimore Ravens. And hey, drop your take in the comments below. We want to hear from the flock. The NFL rumor mill is buzzing with one of the most shocking potential moves of the offseason. Sources suggest that the Baltimore Ravens, traditionally known for their conservative approach at quarterback, have reportedly set their sights on none other than Los Angeles Chargers superstar Justin Herbert. If true, this development could send shockwaves through the league, leaving fans, analysts, and front offices scrambling to make sense of the possibilities. Herbert, who has consistently been among the top quarterbacks in the league, has been a cornerstone for the Chargers since he arrived. His rocket arm, quick decision-making, and ability to extend plays have made him a household name. To imagine him in purple and black, leading a Ravens offense known for its gritty running game and historically stout defense, feels almost surreal. Insiders suggest that Baltimore's interest is not merely curiosity. The team is reportedly exploring multiple scenarios that could make Herbert's arrival possible, from blockbuster trades to unprecedented contract negotiations. Meanwhile, the Chargers' front office is reportedly in total shock at the news. Sources say the locker room has been buzzing, players are exchanging incredulous messages, and the media is already speculating about what this could mean for the franchise's identity. While Los Angeles has built its team around Herbert's talent, the whispers of Baltimore's pursuit have left even veteran executives questioning if the unthinkable could actually happen. Analysts are debating the implications. How would Herbert fit into Baltimore's run-heavy system? Could the Ravens justify a potential trade that might shake their roster to the core? And perhaps most importantly, how would Chargers fans react if their star quarterback were suddenly linked to another team in such a high-stakes scenario? The mere suggestion has ignited social media, with fans speculating, arguing, and fantasizing about a world where Herbert dons a Ravens jersey. For now, nothing is official, and insiders caution that the situation is fluid. But the mere rumor that Justin Herbert could become Baltimore property is enough to send shockwaves through the NFL landscape. Chargers supporters are bracing for a whirlwind, and Ravens enthusiasts are quietly imagining the offensive possibilities. One thing is certain, if even a fraction of these reports hold any truth, the league may never look at quarterback battles the same way again. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay in the loop with exclusive news on our Baltimore Ravens. Make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. We'd love to hear what the flock thinks. Drop your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next one.